The markets where if you're looking at a graph,
Evan,
they go,
Hey, Jason.
and then they go
hey,
down.
we are on. I don't think the sound is coming through, so I think it's time to just start.
Let's do it.
Oh no, there, that was now suddenly there is sound.
I have you caught in the great pose.
Hang on here, folks.
I don't think the sound is coming through, so I think it's time to just
It's
start.
like you're about to karate chop the.
Just a moment, folks. We got technical problems. Hey, that's a pretty good shot. The karate.
Yeah,
chop.
it's a great shot. That should be on our website now.
It should be. It should be. Well, how's everybody doing this morning? Good morning. Good morning
Good morning.
to
Good to see
everybody. And I wasn't getting any comments that the sound wasn't working, but on my own systems it wasn't working. So who knows what's going on? Anyway, we're here. We're live. Evan, angle your camera down just a little bit if you could. Your screen. Much better. So let's talk about some fundamental beliefs. Now, since you happen to be a rabbi, and you need some more lighting, by the way, maybe you want to solve that as I talk about this.
Okay.
But since you are a rabbi, I figured this was an appropriate conversation. But gosh, I got to just go look at that karate chop again. That's pretty good. That's a good shot right there. That's the perfect shot. So let me put some of these on the screen here. And I think these will be interesting to start our discussion today. And let's kind of dive into this because as I said on the podcast the other day, the history of the world is the history of belief. Beliefs are amazingly powerful things. So let's take a look at a couple of these. Number one, well, let me go in order here. Let me go in order, folks. Okay, so ratios versus absolute numbers, critically important. A lot of people look at these absolute numbers, and when they do that, they are never asking the important Jason Hartman question. And that question is, of course, Evan, go ahead. You tell us.
Compared to what?
Compared to what, exactly. And that's what an absolute number never tells you. So if it's about an investment, if it's about the rent to value ratio, that is a ratio, and it gives you the compared to what information. And of course, that is the rent in proportion to the value of the property. Now, a little side note on that one. I have said this many times, but people keep wanting to believe their own stuff. They don't want to hear this. I keep saying it. So hear this again. Here it is. You ready? The rent to value ratio, I want you to know that is not called the rent to what I paid for the property in 1999 ratio. It is called the rent to value ratio, meaning the current value is the important number, not the old value of what you paid for it originally. That doesn't matter because every day that you keep anything you own, look, if you go in my garage, I got a bunch of stuff. If I had the time, I would sell it. Hey, you don't even have to go in the garage. Just look around the house. There's a lot of stuff I would sell if I had time to sell it. Usually I end up just giving it away and taking a little tax deduction for that. I've got bags of stuff in the garage right now. Everything's been closed that I plan to take to Salvation Army. But, I don't know if they're open or not, so just haven't gotten around to it yet. But just remember that when you have an asset, like a piece of property, hopefully income producing property, when you have an asset and you don't sell it, every day that you don't sell it is a day you are essentially buying it back from yourself. You're buying it back from yourself. So what does that tell us? Well,
But Jason, you've said, though, that we shouldn't ever sell except after 27 and a half years.
Well,
so how do you reconcile, not selling something? Can we pull money out of it? Is there a way we can sell it without selling it, or at least cash out without selling?
Absolutely. You can do that with the Refi Til Ya Die methodology, which when we had Meet the Masters last weekend, Ken McElroy was actually talking about that. And, he doesn't call it Refi Til Ya Die, but it's essentially the idea of getting your money back out of an asset without selling it. And that's one of the beauties of income property. You can still keep the asset and get all of your money back, all of your money back. But back to this compared to what question, because I think this is really important. So if you have a property that you bought 10, 20 years ago, it's obviously appreciated. You've got a bunch of equity. And one of the things we do, one of the ways we fool ourselves as investors is we do these rationalizations. You know, it's been said that people buy things based on emotion, and then they, or they not, that's actually, let me just elaborate on that better. People do things based on emotion, and then they rationalize them with logic. So, you know, hey, this Ferrari is a really good value, you know, it's going to be a good investment, and, you know, whatever.
Good gas mileage.
Yeah, it gets good mileage. It's an electric Ferrari. So whatever. We do things based on emotion because we are emotional creatures. We rationalize them with logic. So one of the things we do with our properties is we bought a property 10, 20 years ago. It's appreciated a whole bunch. And then we say, well, you know, I'm getting $3,000 a month rent, and I only paid $400,000 for this property. But now the reality is, they never say this, they never think it enough. Now the property is worth $700,000, and they're still only getting $3,000 a month. And that's a terrible deal, because that $400,000 in gain represents an opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is one of the fundamentally important things in the concept of economics and the concept of return on anything, return on investment, return on time. Because look, when you make one decision, you close the door to another decision. All right. And when you look at ratios like rent to value ratio, it's the rent to value, not the rent to what you paid for it 10 years ago ratio. Okay, so I just had to expand on that one a little bit. Evan, any thoughts?
No, it's so true that I know this takes a while to explain to people because they think they're making, oh my God, you know, I'm getting $2,000 in rent and my mortgage payment is $500. Yeah, because you bought it 20 years ago. You could be, the ability to pull equity out and invest in places where the rent to value ratio is much better. It's a huge opportunity cost, and it's not intuitive. It really has to be taught and explained to people. And I think
no question. So the word of the day is, well, compared to what is always an important phrase, but opportunity costs. That's going to be the phrase of today. That's the phrase of today. It really is. Okay, what's scrolling along the bottom of the screen, Evan? Why don't you prompt me on some of these things? So we talked about ratios being more important than absolute numbers because they tell you compared to what. Okay. How about alignment of interest? Alignment of interest is critical to success. And, you know, that is super important. Whenever you're looking at a deal, whenever you're looking at going into a relationship, you know, in the marriage relationship, there's this biblical concept, and it applies to really everything in life, of being equally yoked. Okay, equally yoked, right? And you know, that refers to, you know, the ox pulling the plow, right? If you have two oxen, you want them to be equally yoked, right? So otherwise, your field is going to be plowed unevenly, right? And so, in a relationship of any sort,
right,
being equally yoked is important. So when you go into a deal and the other party has nothing at stake, but you have everything at stake, you're not equally yoked, okay? And one of the things we talked about at the when we talked about becoming an empowered investor last week at Meet the Masters, is how in the property management and property owner relationship, the parties aren't equally yoked, right? And
Nope.
Evan, since you happen to be a rabbi and you know scripture, you can speak to this concept better than anybody, right?
Without question. I mean, everything for this will be covenant, and a covenant is a sacred relationship.
Evan, you're breaking up.
Right? The classic covenant is between God and the Jewish people, and then, in Christianity between God and humanity. But that's a covenant. And we take that same idea and apply it to contracts. And now, it's not sacred significance, but there are things of value at stake. I mean, looking at real estate law, there are a lot of biblical principles embedded in it. And I think that's just true about life in general. We have to be responsible to each other. And you've been, we help investors make sure that they are aligned, that their interests are aligned so that they don't get taken advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. So alignment of interest, that's another way to be empowered. So number one, understand ratios. Number two, have interest aligned. In Stephen Covey's great book, the late, great Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there's a chapter on win-win. And a deal has to be win-win or it's no deal, okay? Now,
didn't you meet him on a cruise?
Sorry, what?
Didn't you meet Stephen Covey on a cruise?
I met him on a cruise in Russia and Scandinavia many years ago. Yes, just by accident. He was on this Forbes investor cruise that I was on, and I was watching. There was a little activity for the passengers, a fashion show, and it said so-and-so Covey, which was his wife from Utah. And I thought, that's got to be Stephen Covey's wife. And I went back to my stateroom and I called the front desk on the ship and I said, may I speak to the room of Stephen Covey? And they connected me. And he was such a nice guy, such a gentleman. And I later met him and we chatted for a bit on the ship, and what a great guy. What a great guy. Absolutely. So win-win or no deal. Okay. Alignment of interest. Many times in life, I have made the mistake of being a good negotiator, right? You think, well, it's good to be a good negotiator, right? And get the best deal you can. I mean, no one would disagree that that's a good idea, right? But sometimes you negotiate too well and you negotiate yourself out of a deal, okay? And the other party doesn't want to do the deal, or they have no incentive to uphold the deal for the long term. There's an old concept in real estate that I've talked about for many, many years. And it's this, because real estate has a waiting period. In essence, from the time you do the deal to the time you close the deal, at least maybe 30 to 45 days are going to go by, maybe a lot longer, right? And between that time, that's a time where both parties, buyer and seller, are thinking about the deal they made, right? They've agreed, they signed the contract, and now you're in the escrow period, right? And where the property is under contract. And so that's the time where someone can get cold feet and back out of the deal, okay? So the old saying is this: the best real estate deals never close. The best real estate deals never close because they were the best for one party, but they weren't a good enough deal for the other party. And the idea is that the other party is going to figure it out, right? They're going to come to the conclusion, boy, this buyer really stole this property from me. Or the seller's going to say or the buyer's going to say, man, I totally overpaid for this property. This isn't a very good deal. So the best deals never close. The deal's got to be win-win or no deal. All right. Evan, along the bottom of the screen, we believe in the long game and the big
long game. We believe in ratios. So true. And I think you've also said when you do a deal, leave a little meat on the bone, right? Yeah. That you should, because hopefully you're doing continual business. And even if you succeed in getting an amazing deal where you maybe slightly take advantage of somebody, it's going to hurt you in the future. I mean, we're in this for the long game. So having positive relationships and people knowing that it's a win-win itself is a benefit.
Absolutely. It's got to be win-win or no deal. Hey, by the way, do you like my American flag patriotic background today? I just felt kind of patriotic. Now I understand, we have people probably watching from all over the world. On the podcast, we have listeners from 189 countries. That's almost every country. I'm looking forward to picking up an audience in Cuba and North Korea. We got
You
to
have
get
to
there.
visit all these countries, Jason. You got to add them to your list now.
That's right. Right. I've only been to 87, but the podcast has listeners
Yeah.
to 189. So I'm gonna take off the American flag and change out and try this background. There's the gold satin background. That looks kind of cool. This is the usual one. I'm just playing around
I
here.
like that color.
I like
That's
that one.
amazing.
That's the one we've used all the time, but we got to mix it up a little bit, right? So we'll go with that one for a few minutes. Okay, so alignment of interests, ratios over absolute numbers, and believe in the long game and the big picture. And Evan, I think this kind of goes back to that same idea of the best deals never close. The deal's got to be win-win or no deal. And the long game would tell you that don't negotiate yourself out of a deal, okay? Every deal looks fantastic in the rear view mirror, okay? You let a little time go by, and these deals tend to look phenomenal, okay? They really look phenomenal. But sometimes at the time you think, gosh, I don't know, am I buying at the top of the market? Market timing is a fool's errand. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. But we still have these thoughts, right? That maybe.
But the beautiful thing is, you've taught us that with income property, you can always renegotiate the deal. I was telling you earlier offline that with the pandemic and schools essentially being closed, unfortunately, we have to have more childcare in my house because my wife and we both work, and we so 5 loans down essentially from 5.5 to 3.5, and the cash flow I'm saving is going to pay for all the extra childcare with just signing a few papers. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, you know what, Evan, you broke up a little bit. You're breaking up sometimes, your connection. Make sure nothing is syncing in the background on your computer.
Okay.
Okay. But basically, since you told me that story, I'll retell it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you refinanced a property, and the refinance lowered the expense on the property enough to pay the cost of childcare, right? So,
yeah.
Phenomenal.
Cash flow saved. I mean, for $1,000 a month, probably more than that. I haven't calculated the whole thing, but it's really incredible.
And the childcare you're talking about is your au pair, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which is not cheap. I mean, none of it's cheap. You got to pay for so much, and it's remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, hey, post your questions here, folks, and thank you for the good morning comments. I won't post those all, but well, there you go. There they all are. So thank you for the good mornings, and good morning to you. Let's keep diving in here. Let's go over a couple more beliefs of the empowered investor. What's that?
We got a nice comment that's from Kyle that says, just in the process of refining 2 properties through Jason's network and increase cash flow by $230 a month. There you go.
That's fantastic. Kyle, fantastic. Congratulations. The money is free right now. The money is totally free. So, get the free money. I mean, I can't believe how many times I have these conversations with people that they say, well, I'm working on paying off all my properties. When you're being paid to borrow money, okay? Now, there are just a couple of exceptions to this, okay? But for almost everybody, that's universally the great advice, okay? And by the way, there's the rest of his story, okay?
3.125. That's amazing.
That's the interest rate. You didn't put a percentage sign on it, but that's the interest rate. 3.125. You're getting paid to borrow the money, Kyle. Congratulations. What was I saying about that? I did a video. It's on my YouTube channel where when Carmen and I were last year, we were on this Scandinavian and Russian cruise. Not the one where I met Stephen Covey. That was like 20 years ago. But last year we were on that cruise, and I did a video right on the deck of the ship, this super windy video talking about the rare occurrence where you want to either pay a property off or pay cash for a property. But otherwise, if the credit is available, if the money is available, borrow the money, because like Kyle has here on the screen, it's basically free money, okay? Free money. So you borrow.
And what you're doing, Jason, is the real estate insiders, the ones who are in commercial real estate and make huge amounts of money, they know all this already. But the average, some of them may not, but the average home buyer doesn't know this material, and they don't see the benefits of income property. And that's what you're trying to teach them. I mean, the more you learn, the more you see how valuable cheap money is. It's incredible.
It is incredible. It is incredible. Okay, so folks, post your questions and we will try and get to all of them, questions or comments. Kyle, thanks for sharing that story. Let's talk about a couple of these. Okay, so number one, we believe it's an amazing time to be alive. And it really is. The opportunities we have today are nothing short of phenomenal. Technology has allowed us to be long distance investors. They've allowed us to sell, technology has allowed us to self-manage properties from a long distance. It has allowed us to be more empowered. Okay, technology is an empowering force, as long as the evil big tech companies don't take that away by censoring speech and all this kind of stuff, which they have no business of doing, but they are doing it. So, it's a pendulum. There's a war over this. There are antitrust laws that'll hopefully rescue us. There's a lot of pressure, okay, from governmental agencies that might rescue us from this. But overall, it's an amazing time to be alive. And remember something, back to kind of the comment, this is an overriding comment on how amazing it is, but also the ratio comment, okay? And this is, people just get so deceived by statistics. And there's that old famous book, How to Lie with Statistics, right? Which, by the way, now is on audio. And it's fascinating to listen to, especially because it really tells you about inflation. All the examples are from the olden days, and it's fascinating. But one of the things we've got to remember is to stop looking at housing prices as though it is this amazing metric that we should all look at. Well, housing prices now are higher than they were at the last peak. Okay, but almost nobody buys a house based on the price of the house. They buy it based on the payment.
Right.
And guess what? Do the math, folks. Okay, housing is actually cheaper now with these interest rates than it was back then. Okay, why do you think there is no inventory? Why do you think prices are rising? Because housing is cheaper. It is underpriced by that metric. Okay, now, yes, absolute price does count. It does matter, but it doesn't matter as much as the payment, because almost everybody is buying based on a payment, not a price. Evan.
A couple of things. When you said compared to what, I thought back to people today, let's say lower middle class, live better today than the very rich did 100 years ago. And actually, that's really true I was thinking about with COVID-19, one of the reasons it stopped spreading is everyone was outside during not this going back to 1918, the Spanish flu. One of the reasons it stopped spreading is everyone was outside in the hot sun because there was no air conditioning. And so the sun heat killed it. Today, air conditioning was only the province of a very small elite. Today, everyone has central air. So that's actually made it more difficult because people go inside and it spread. But be that as it may, we have so many, it's an amazing time to be alive because we all have access to things today that people 100 years ago didn't have, which is amazing. We have to remember that.
It is absolutely amazing. So that is a very important point, and we have a lot more access than we used to. No question
We've got some good questions.
Okay. Okay. I'll get to them in a second. Let me just finish this thought.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing time to be alive. Be willing to delay gratification and conservative cash flow investing. That is real investing. That is not speculation, not gambling. Commandment number 5 of my Originally 10 commandments, now 23 commandments. We're going to keep adding to this till we get to like 50 commandments. Is thou shalt not gamble. Okay, the property must make sense the day you buy it, or you don't buy it. And I'm going to talk, if we get time, about Richard Cantillon. But Evan, go ahead, fire away on the questions.
And
by
just
the way,
if people had followed that rule in 2008, how much money people could have saved if they had just followed that one rule. There are several good questions. Someone asked if they should bother to refinance your 80K mortgage. Well, at 4.75, you know, that's
Evan, wait. Can you, from your side, can you put the question on the screen?
I don't think so.
Only I can do that.
I think only
See, folks, this is a very homespun show. We're just showing you the behind the scenes here on our production. Okay, so I got to put it up there?
Yeah.
Okay, there it is. So Andy is asking, should I bother to refinance my $80,000 mortgage? Okay, so the question is, we need a few more pieces of information, Andy. First of all, how far into that mortgage are you? People often forget that refinancing is not, it's not as free as it might seem. It's usually a good deal with interest rates this low, but let me just outline a couple other things. Number one, at our Meet the Masters conference last year, when we used to have live conferences, that was in Newport Beach, California, we talked about the big, boring idea. And what is the big, boring idea? If you've heard me talk about this on the podcast, you know it's about ROA. Now, you've heard about ROI, but this is ROA. And what does ROA stand for? I made it up. It stands for return on amortization. Okay? So, Andy, whenever you have a mortgage, you pay a blend every month of principal and interest on that mortgage, P&I, principal and interest, right? And that blend changes over time on an amortizing loan. And amort is the genesis of this amortizing word, or amortize. Amort in Latin means to kill. So over time, you kill the mortgage, you amortize it. And you pay a certain amount of principal and a certain amount of interest every month. And in the beginning, you pay mostly interest. And as time goes on, you pay more principal on that loan, okay? So when you have that loan for 7 years, 12 years, 15 years, whatever, the longer you've had that loan, the more principal you're chunking down. Now, you know, if you followed my work for any length of time, you know that I don't believe in paying off mortgages. I think it's kind of a bad deal when you've got incredibly low rate, essentially free money where you're really being paid to borrow, negative interest rate money in real terms. You should keep the mortgage. The mortgage is an asset, not a liability, contrary to what some believe. But just understand, when you refinance, if you only have 20 years left on that loan, you're now making that loan, if you refinance on a 30-year loan, which most people do, you're extending it by 10 years. And you're paying more interest up front again and not chunking down that principal. So understand, you do lose some ROA, return on amortization, but it's usually not much. I just want you to know it's not completely free, the idea of refinancing, okay? Also, is this on a personal residence? You can get a lower interest rate on a personal residence than you can on an investment property. So what would the new rate be? I assume, Andy, you've shopped around and you've looked at interest rate possibilities. So what would the new rate be? So there are several questions there, but the answer without detail is probably yes. You probably should refinance it, especially if you can get cash out of the property and do a cash out refi and use that cash to buy other investments, assets that pay you every month, okay? And how do you define an investment? Yeah. My definition is it has to produce income or it's not an investment. Evan, what do you think of our analysis there?
Excellent. I mean, I would also say, talk to your investment counselor if you have one, or sign up to get one.
And where can they
But
do
I would
that?
also say looking every day, every hour. The other thing is, you got to remember, I'm cutting out. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There is a convenience factor. It does take time to fill out all those papers.
Yeah.
So that's
so what
important.
Evan was saying. Sorry about the technical difficulties, folks. That we're having some connection problems here a little bit. But basically, you can get an investment counselor at jasonhartman.com, and we will help you analyze whether or not you should refinance. But the answer is probably yes. Probably yes. Okay. All right. Let's get to the next question. You want to read this one, Evan?
Rates, or as Jason would say, crap rates, and cost of cash do you aim for in rental multifamily properties?
You're cutting out. I don't know if other people can hear you, but you're cutting out on my end, or so anyway. So basically the question is, in a market where there's no significant appreciation, what cap rate and cash on cash return do you aim for in rental multifamily properties? Well, like I did hear Evan say this, I call the cap rate the crap rate. I don't like that metric very much. And the reason I don't like it, a lot of commercial real estate people use it, is that it doesn't give you enough information. It doesn't include your leverage, okay? It doesn't include the mortgage, which is a huge asset. And it also doesn't include appreciation. The reason people use cap rate is that it allows you to compare one property to another regardless of financing. But my question is, why would you want to do that? The financing is such an important part of it that you don't want to do that. Okay, so but I will answer your question. So I would like to see those cap rates around 7%, okay, or better if you can do better, and then cash on cash return is probably going to be 9 to 11% nowadays. All of this is not as good as it used to be, folks. It used to be better because the properties were less expensive and these metrics were better. But it's like the old question. What's the best time to plant a tree? Well, 20 years ago is the best time. Second best time is today. Like Karen Lamb says in that quote, that's our investment counselor Carrie puts it at the bottom of her email signature. A year from now, you'll wish you had started today. Okay, so there's no going back. We got to move forward. Everything's forward momentum. So invest, get in the game. Okay. All right. Chris Francie says, in the hunt for IRR, which means internal rate of return, and by the way, IRR is the holy grail of metrics when it comes to analyzing return on investment. So maybe I'll go into IRR for a moment here, but let me read the rest of the question. I find myself favoring cash flow over appreciation. My reasoning is simple. The cash flow I can calculate so it feels safer to me. Is that foolish? No, Evan, good. No. Yeah, this is good. Chris,
this guy's a disciple.
Yeah, Chris, you are a wise man. So yes, cash flow is much more reliable than appreciation. So big thumbs up to Chris. That's good. You are absolutely right. Now, since you asked about IRR, let's talk about that for just a moment. Internal rate of return is a complex calculation that I used to do when I was 20 years old, taking my commercial real estate investing courses. And thankfully, I never went into commercial real estate. I always liked investment housing much better. And that obviously was a much better decision for sure. But I used to calculate IRR by hand. and with a calculator, just a regular calculator, okay? Not with a piece of software like you have today. That was the old days. I used to walk to school, and it was uphill both ways, okay? So IRR takes into account, the reason that's the holy grail, takes into account pretty much everything in the investment, including streams of cash flow over time and ultimate disposition of the property after acquisition, okay? So it is really the holy grail of metrics in calculating return. But even though IRR does include time value of money, which is very important, it does not include one of my metrics, and that is inflation-induced debt destruction. It kind of includes that, but not very well. So IIDD, inflation-induced debt destruction, my trademark term, okay? IRR and pretty much all other forms of analysis miss this one. They sort of come at it a little bit. They include it by virtue of leverage and time value of money, but it's not really a complete understanding of it. So if you're wondering what that is, and it is really the hidden wealth creator with income property, just go to jasonhartman.com, use the search bar in the upper right, and type in inflation-induced debt destruction, and listen to my podcast episodes on this. There might be something on my YouTube channel as well, but definitely on the podcast. There's a lot about that, okay? So great question. All right. How do you account for rising property taxes? And I love your name. It's a gray area.
Life.
Pretty good, huh, Evan?
That's life.
Yeah. Well, that is life. And I think this is going to be more and more of an issue because municipalities are broke. The states are broke, many of them. The federal government is broke, but the federal government gets to print money unlike everybody else. So it's different. But property taxes in some areas, if they can get away with it, they're going to try and raise them. Okay, this is part of the money grab that's happening. But the beautiful thing about pretty much everything in economics and in markets, just in markets broadly, unless the government distorts the market adjusts. An equilibrium is always reached. A counterbalance. If you, of course, we all studied biology to some extent. Remember the concept of homeostasis, right? Remember homeostasis, where the body will seek to regulate and balance itself. That concept of homeostasis. I hope I'm getting that right, by the way. This is from like memory from high school, and that was a long time ago. So in that, what happens is properties and corporations, they are simply pass-through entities. What I mean by that is that if expenses go up, okay, say property taxes go up, then rents go up. Also, investors will be discouraged. For example, when you have rent control, okay, this is another good example of homeostasis in a very negative way. But when the government tries to distort the market by implementing some idiotic socialist Marxist idea of, say, rent control, which is an epic failure every time and everywhere it's tried. When they institute rent control, like they have now in the Socialist Republic of California, my former home, what happens? Instantly, there's a shortage of housing that starts to occur. And it gets worse and worse over time. Because why would an investor invest and buy property in a market where the rent is not dictated by the free market, but it's dictated by some government bureaucrat, some idiot, okay? And so when investors' returns are hurt, it ultimately creates a shortage of housing, right? If you want there to be more housing supply, then, have a laissez-faire government approach, and there will be more supply. When you restrict things through zoning, through rent control, through, all kinds of environmental requirements. Then you create shortages, artificial shortages that wouldn't be there if the market were allowed to address them. So I wouldn't worry too much about the property tax issue. It's an issue for sure, but remember, pass-through entity, landlords will simply raise prices on their rent, okay? And you see this, by the way, in Texas, okay? And we've done, hundreds, if not thousands of transactions in Texas, in all the major Texas cities, helped our clients buy there through our referral network. And now we're not doing that much business in Texas anymore because the prices have gone up and the rent to value ratios aren't as good as they used to be. But in the old days, when we used to do a lot more business in Texas, we still do a little bit, but not as much as before. But in the old days, we would have like a comparable property in, say, Texas and in Tennessee or Arkansas or or Georgia or any of our other markets, or Florida at the time, right? Totally comparable, like apples to apples properties, okay? 3-bedroom, 2-bath house here, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house there, similar neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. The rent in Texas was always higher. And what I noticed is the rent was always higher by just about the amount of difference in that property tax load for the investor. Because the tenants thought they were getting this great deal in Texas. They thought, well, if they're a tenant, they live in Texas where there's no state income tax. And if they don't own the property, there's no property tax either. They don't pay property tax because they're not the owner, they're the renter. But the landlords in reality were always passing that cost through to the tenant. Okay, that's what was happening behind the scenes.
Jason, can I add one thing?
I just hope I can hear you. That's why I'm doing all the talking.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, I have to run in a second anyways. But one of our really smart clients, all our clients are smart, but one of our smart clients just wrote in a couple days ago to us about this very issue. And he said that there's actually a benefit to it for us, because if property taxes rise, it's based on appraisals. It's based on how they evaluate it. And if those appraisals are used by lenders, so we can do more refi till you die with rising property values.
Yes, Evan, I'm so glad you brought that up. So what you're saying then is that if the tax assessment, one way of raising property taxes is not by raising the percentage, which, they're trying to repeal Prop 13, Howard Jarvis's law in California now, right? And that'll be a disaster. California just is trying to commit suicide every way it can. I never saw a state trying to ruin itself as much as California. But what Evan is saying there is that one way to raise property taxes is not by passing a law or overturning Prop 13 or anything like that. It's simply to somehow push the county tax assessor to just assess the properties at higher prices. Thereby, your tax revenue would increase.
Right.
Okay. So that's a way to do an end run around it. A lot of presidents do kind of an end run around the Constitution by doing executive orders. So Obama was, notorious for this. Trump does it too. But I'd say you could be more critical of what Obama did. And that was a way to get around it. Another way to get an end run around the Constitution was to have these unelected czars, okay? And so they could do that too. Evan's going to go. Yeah.
I'm an emotional guy. I agree with you. But Jason, we have so many more questions. I got to run.
Okay.
So it's
hey,
great.
You're sounding good. You sure you can't stay a few minutes longer?
I gotta take my kids, unfortunately.
Okay. I knew you had to go. Thanks for stopping by, Evan.
Thank you. All right.
I'm going to get to the rest of these. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Okay, so let's get to the next one. So what's a good target ratio for rent to value on investment property? Well, it's always been this 1% rule. That's always been the best one. But you can't do it now like you could. Let me see what's going on with my screen here. You can't do it like you could. Oh, I want to get to that in a moment. This is coming up, folks. So 1% has been the ideal. okay? But you can rarely do that on a good quality property, So if you can get 0.7, that's pretty good, meaning, just to do round numbers here, a $100,000 property is renting for $700 a month. That would be a 0.7 rent to value ratio, a 0.7 rent to value. And the rent to value ratio, as I talked about on a recent podcast, has been a little bit repealed. Why has it been repealed? Well, because in an era where you have incredibly low interest rates, the rent to value ratio that does not account for interest rates is less important than it has been in the past in an era when you had higher interest rates. See, the rent to value ratio is really another kind of a cap rate, if you will. It's before expenses, but it is comparing rental income to value of the property, okay? And it doesn't take into account the benefits of incredibly low interest rates. All right, so understand that. By the way, let me show you what's on the screen here, and then I'll get to more of your questions, all right? Okay, so this, and I will blow it up here, this is Wikipedia, as you can see, and this is Richard Cantillon. And the reason I want to show you this is that as real estate investors, you have a tremendous benefit, if you will, to do what he had talked about, okay? And so this is known as the Cantillon Effect. And what it means, basically, and we see this with all these elites, all the politicians, all the banksters, and, look, like I say, that old saying, right? It's a great one. If you have a gun, you can rob a bank. But if you have a bank, you can rob everybody, right? And it's really connects with Richard Cantillon and his thesis, which was this: the people closest to the money supply, the legal and regulatory system, the people in Congress, the politicians, the lobbyists, the bankers, the Wall Street crooks, right? The people closest to the money get the most of it. And I was kind of thinking about the Cantillon effect. And I was thinking, as real estate investors, because we take advantage of inflation-induced debt destruction, because we take advantage of these incredibly favorable environments. We have the most tax-favored asset class in America. We have the most historically proven asset class in the entire world. We are really taking advantage of the Cantillon effect because we are, in a way, close to the money. And we are close to the money because we have these multi-dimensional characteristics that make income property this truly incredible asset class. And it's just an amazing asset class. Study Richard Cantillon. It's really interesting what he talked about. Oh, by the way, was my screen share not working? You cannot look at the simulcast because there is a big delay. So don't do that when you're streaming. Okay. All right. So getting off of that, let's get back to some of your other questions and go over those. All right. So what do we got here? Okay. Property taxes. We talked about that one. We talked about the rent to value ratio. So 0.7 maybe is your answer for today with low interest rates. But if the interest rates go up, you will need a better rent to value ratio to make that investment pencil out, or you'll need better rents. And by the way, when interest rates go up, it puts upward pressure on rental prices. Because remember, people only have three basic options when it comes to housing. Housing is a universal need. And the three options are: you can buy, you can rent, or you can be homeless. At one of my live conferences years ago, someone shouted out, No, you can live with your parents. And I could tell that was a parent who had a millennial kid, otherwise known as the boomerang generation, because like a boomerang, you throw it and it comes back to you, right? And the kids go away to college and then they come back and live at home. So yes, you can live with your parents. That is another option. But if interest rates are high, it tends to lower housing affordability, of course. And so that keeps people in the rental pool, which pushes upward pressure on rental prices. Okay, so that's the answer to that question. Okay, if I got a Refi Til Ya Die question, and when you use the Jason YouTube example, 10 properties, $100,000 each, rule of 72, 6% appreciation. 12 years goes by, portfolio value. I wish I had all this ready to show you today. Maybe we'll do an entire episode on Refi Til Ya Die, okay? And the Refi Til Ya Die concept, let me just explain it to everybody else. Basically, allows people to buy these 10 properties, $100,000 each in this example, and they wait 12 years. By the way, let me get this off the screen so you can see me. They wait 12 years, so they take in advantage of what we call the rule of 72s, okay? And the rule of 72 is that property value at 6% appreciation will double every 12 years. That's the example we use in the Refi Til Ya Die example, okay? So here he is asking about that, okay? $400,000 in equity, pay off loans of $800,000. Yes, that's exactly how the example goes. In order, also increasing in place. So, okay, so does this question continue to another? It doesn't thread these questions together here. No, your rent probably will not increase at 6% per year. What tends to happen over time with this portfolio is the properties become out of sync because usually the appreciation in prices happens faster than the appreciations in rent. And when that happens, it will basically put you in a position where your properties become too valuable and you'll want to sell them and do a 2-for-1 1031 exchange, okay? And I've done this many times. And some of our clients have actually done a 3-for-1. So I'll give you an example of that. I did this a couple times in the last few years, okay? I had a property in Charlotte, North Carolina. It had appreciated too much. Now, why would most people would think that's good, not bad? And what I did is I went and I sold that property. I did a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, and I purchased 2 properties in Memphis for the value of that 1 property in Charlotte, North Carolina. I increased my cash flow in that example by about $600 per month, and that was a very, very good deal, okay? And so a lot of times you have to do that. It just depends how the properties appreciate. But if they appreciate too much, I want you to sell them on a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, pay 0 tax, you defer that, and then buy either 2 or 3 more properties and basically roll them into a situation where you get better rent-to-value ratios and more cash flow. So, good question. Okay, Backbeat 911. I'll be 1031 exchanging out of LA. Good decision for sure. Consider paying for some of the rental properties in full. Probably not unless you have to, okay? Need about 4 to 5 properties. So Derek, first of all, we can help you, and we might be helping you. You might be one of our clients already, but very good decision to sell the Los Angeles property. I grew up in Los Angeles, and let me tell you, I do not think the prospects for LA or California are very good at all. And so, yes, I think you should sell that property, 1031 exchange it. We've done that for many clients, and buy several properties in landlord-friendly jurisdictions and increase your cash flow and have just more sensible properties. Diversify, so you can go into maybe 2 or 3 markets, so you're more diversified. Those will be more landlord friendly, better rent to value ratios. Good decision. Excellent, Derek. And if you need help with that, if you're not already a client, go to jasonhartman.com and we'll be happy to help you with that. Okay, this question. How can we make multiple offers on different properties while having only one loan? Aren't we to bind the contract when making the offer? I don't know what that question really is. So, are you saying you've been pre-qualified by a lender and you want to make multiple offers on multiple properties, I guess? So you can just put a contingency into each offer that says, if the other offer is accepted, then this one is null and void. Most sellers won't take that. They'll want you to decide what house you're buying, what property you're buying, but they might agree to it. So if they do, you can put a contingency clause in there. If you're talking about trying to acquire multiple properties all at once, then that's really more a question of, will your lender allow you to do a blanket loan and purchase multiple properties? And I think that's what you might be asking there. I'm not sure I understand the question, but there's a little bit of feedback for it, okay, Reed, I live in Idaho and it's the fastest growing state. Should I FOMO, fear of missing out, even if the numbers don't make sense, or stick with my Midwest investing? So are you saying that you are thinking you should buy Idaho properties that don't make as much sense? Is that what you're saying? Well, I would buy the more sensible properties. Now, years ago, we used to recommend Boise, and we did quite a bit of business in Boise, Meridian, many of the surrounding cities. But the properties are just too expensive there now. They don't make sense. All of our clients that purchase properties there, hey, they're doing great. I mean, they made money. So congratulations to them. Many of them have probably exchanged and done my 2-for-1 strategy that I mentioned, or sometimes a 3-for-1 strategy in exchanging out of those markets. No, I would do the Midwest investing, or even better yet, the Southeast. The Southeast is really where most of the action is. Midwest is okay. Hey, Boise's better than California, or Idaho is better than California, but most of those markets are a little too expensive now. And one thing to also just keep in mind is that most of the action, you want to diversify and be in multiple markets, of course, but most of the action is in the warmer climates, okay? There are 10,000 people a day turning 65 in this country, 10,000 people a day. And as they reach retirement age, if they're moving, they're usually moving to the Sun Belt, okay? That's where the action is. So one of the things you want to keep in mind, okay? All right. Joel, what is the best market for cash flowing single family homes? Well, asking the best market, everybody asks us that question. We're in multiple markets. We always get asked that question all the time. It is probably the most common question. And the answer is, it's like asking a parent, who's your favorite kid? Now, a lot of times a parent does have a favorite kid, but they're not going to tell you. And so that's a tough one. I'd say we have tons of business in Florida right now. Georgia is also very good. Tennessee, perennial, good markets. But, there's good deals in Indianapolis, which is not a warm climate. I'd say most of the action is Florida right now. But again, the real answer is you should diversify, and you shouldn't just be in one market. If you're buying, say 6 properties, you want to buy 2 in 3 different markets, okay? Diversify. And that's what you can do through our network. Go to jasonhartman.com, click on the properties tab, and check out some of the properties there. and look at some of those properties. Okay, same person. That's Joel again. Not assessed 80. Not sure assessed amount. You're right. Yes, Joel, you're referring back to our tax assessor discussion earlier, I think. And yes, you're absolutely right. The appraiser does not go by what the tax assessor does. But let me tell you something. It does matter. And the reason it matters is that when people see their tax assessment, okay, when they get that bill in the mail and they see that the tax assessor says the property is worth $200,000 and they were thinking their property is only worth $180,000, but the tax assessor wanting to get more money out of that property owner, that basically becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Where they suddenly now have this expectation as a future seller or as a future refinancer that their property is worth $200,000. And there's that old great idea that our old I'm sure he's passed on by now, S.I. Hayakawa, that senator from California. Okay, that sleepy senator from California. He wrote a book on self-fulfilling prophecy, and he said something very profound. He said, the self-fulfilling prophecy is something that is neither true nor false, yet it is capable of becoming true if it is believed. It is capable of becoming true if it is believed. So that's why our belief about ourselves, about our investments, about our property values, about our significant other, about anything in life, about our future, totally influences reality. We literally project and make reality true by our beliefs. The self-fulfilling prophecy, as S.I. Hayakawa said, something that is neither true nor false, but is capable of becoming true if it is believed. Remember that for everything in life, including assessed property values. How do you like that one? Okay, so see, we take our real estate investing here into the metaphysical era. Yes, we do. Okay, so Justin Mason, what's wrong with your rental property increasing in value? Well, there's nothing wrong with it, except if you hold on to it and it increases in value, Justin, to the point where the rent to value ratio gets out of whack, which this is a common problem. I'm putting problem in quotes because it's a good problem to have. It's like that social media tag, hashtag first world problems, okay? It is a problem because every day you don't sell that property or at least refinance that property, you've got unused equity. You've got equity sitting in that property. It becomes lazy money. It becomes money that's not working for you. Remember, equity in properties is asleep. It is lazy. It is napping. It is sleeping. Now, if you're an employer, would you hire a lazy employee? Hopefully not. Okay. Would you hire an employee who sleeps on the job? Hopefully not, right? If you find out they're lazy, if you find out they're sleeping in the job, hopefully you would fire them. Okay. So the same is true of your properties. The way you fire equity in property is you refinance it and you pull the cash out and you put the cash to work. Okay. It's not doing anything for you when it's sitting in the property. There's this metric with real estate investing, and it's a completely screwy, faulty metric. Here's the metric. You ready? It is ROE. ROE like Edward. And it stands for equity. Return on equity. There is no such thing as return on equity. I want to submit to you, there's no such thing as return on equity. Why? Because the property will go up in value or it'll go down in value regardless of how much equity you have. It will produce a certain amount of rent or a lesser amount of rent regardless of how much equity you have. It will produce a certain amount of rent if you have a high mortgage payment or a low mortgage payment. Have you ever had one of your tenants come to you and say, Justin, how much is your mortgage payment? I want to make sure I'm covering it for you. I'm guessing you've never had this happen to you because the tenant does not care. They have no interest in that. Your property will perform independent of the amount of equity you have in the property. So, a long way of answering your question. If the property goes way up in value and you have a bunch of equity in that property and your rent to value ratio has gotten out of whack, you need to consider selling that property first and foremost, or at the very least, consider refinancing that property for a property that will produce more income. An example would be the person who has a highly appreciated property and that property is worth, say, $600,000, and maybe they paid $300,000 or $400,000 for it. Good for them. It's got equity. It's got appreciation. Wonderful. Now, they can get their same $3,000 a month rent, a 0.5 rent to value ratio for that property, or they can liquidate the property and they can buy 6 $100,000 properties that rent for $1,000 a month. And instead of getting $3,000 per month, they get $6,000 per month in income. That's a much better deal, right? And they sell the property on a 1031 tax deferred exchange, so they have zero tax implication. And they can also go from one property in one market to maybe 6 properties in 3 markets, and they can be more diversified. So now they have lower risk. They have 6 properties rather than 1. If one property goes vacant, you got a 100% vacancy rate. In 6 properties, the likelihood of them all going vacant at the same time is very low. So this is a better strategy. We've helped, hundreds and hundreds of clients do that exact strategy. So what is wrong with rental property increasing in value is that you get to the point where you have a property where the ratios get out of whack and you have equity that's not working for you. That's what's wrong with it. Okay. So Ivan, Jason, I love your content. Thank you, Ivan. What's your opinion surrounding places surrounding San Francisco? I think you meant to say I live in Marin. Maybe you love it too. I live in Marin County, where it's 30 minutes away, and I don't know, it's going to be hit by a tsunami. Which tsunami are you talking about? The figurative tsunami I'm talking about the flight from high density urban areas to low density areas. Well, that's certainly happening in and around San Francisco, no question about it. I think it's just too expensive there. It's just too expensive. Certainly, there is some value of investing as people flee to just the outlying areas outside of these major high-density urban areas, San Francisco, New York, even outside of the high-density areas in Los Angeles, right? But by and large, people have discovered that they can live anywhere, okay? And they can live 30 minutes away or an hour away, or they can live 300 miles away. And it's all the same when you're doing a Zoom meeting, okay? So I would really recommend that you be in the lower cost markets that we recommend, because you're just going to be better off, okay? Okay, I've got 2 in Tennessee, Memphis. Okay, great. Yeah, good for you, Joel. That's awesome. Good place to buy properties. Heading to our website. Hey, thanks. Thank you. We appreciate your business. And that website, of course, is jasonhartman.com. Okay, regarding Dallas as a primary resident, should we buy or sell? I think the Big D Dallas is great. It's just gotten a little expensive. We would love to still be doing business in Dallas, but again, those markets have they've just become a little pricey, and it's hard for us to operate in these more pricey markets. If you can find deals in Dallas, I think that's great, but you don't want to be in only one market. You need to be in several markets, right? You need to be in several markets. Okay. And it looks like I answered your question. Thank you. Okay, good stuff. So we'll try and get a couple more questions in if we can. One of our clients and team members was going to pop by. I don't know if she was able to make it. I don't think she's able to make it so far unless she's having just tech problems. So that might be. Okay, so let me get on to some of my other things, okay? Conservative cash flow investing. And if you have more questions, just pop them in there. I see another one coming in, and I'll get to those in a moment. But I just want to get to a couple more of these items. So delaying gratification, yes, those are the people that get ahead in life, are the people willing to delay gratification. And that takes some character, you know. Most people, they want it now. It's a fast food, instant gratification society we live in. And that's why most people won't make money in real estate investing. They'll never do it because they don't want to wait. They've got to have it now. And you know what? The now thing, you know, it just doesn't work. Occasionally it works at the casino, but that's not investing. It's not mature, in my opinion. Okay, so now let's look at the bottom of the screen and get to the other ones. And let me get this comment off the screen here too. And I know we've got another question coming in. Okay, so I'll get that off in a second. Let me grab this question, okay? Okay, hi Jason, I live in Denmark. After a long search, Carrie finally found a lender for me. So Carrie is one of our investment counselors. And the interest offered was from 4.99 to 7.99. You know, that's a pretty good deal if you'd live in Denmark. By the way, I spent a lot of time in Denmark last year, so great place. Do you have a bike? I'm guessing you do. I could not believe the number of bicycles in Denmark. It's truly amazing. So this is, when you're a foreign national, you're not going to get these great Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac U.S. mortgage rates, okay? But 4.99 is not bad at all. 7.99, that's a little higher than I'd like to see. If you can get around that 4.99%, you are doing great. I think that's fantastic for a foreign national. Okay, what are the factors to determine which interest rate would be offered? Well, I'm not sure because you are talking to the lender and I'm not, but we plan to do a future live stream and another podcast. We've had some podcasts on this topic with one of these portfolio lenders that offers these special programs for foreign nationals and people who are beyond their 10 properties and so forth. But I'm guessing that one of the primary factors is down payment or loan to value ratio. So if you're putting, they'll probably require a minimum of 20% down. If you're putting just a minimum of 20% down, the interest rate's probably going to be higher. But as you go 25% or 30% down, you're going to get a better rate. Okay, so that's probably what they're using to determine interest rate. Okay, all right. Quantalytics economics. Wow, nothing like these names, folks. You got to use your real names. But I like the graph, and I agree with the quant analysis. Is the North Carolina market, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Charlotte, currently good for buying rentals? I'd say it's probably pretty good. I like North Carolina. We've done tons of business in Charlotte and the outlying areas. We do not have a good team there now. We have some bad people we can refer you to, but we're not going to do that. That's why we're not really recommending any properties in Charlotte or the greater Charlotte metro right now, because we don't have good people there at the moment. Unless our investment counselors know something I don't, and they may. So I always want to leave that door open for them. But I think the market is pretty good. I think it's getting a little expensive and a little bit hybridish. What I mean by that is three kinds of markets: linear, cyclical, and hybrid markets. Hybridish, it means getting a little expensive. Still, it could work, but not as well as a linear market. Okay, so if you can find deals there, they might be good. And I look forward to the time when we can be recommending deals there. Okay, and Ivan says, thanks, my pleasure. Okay, so let's get to this last one, and then we will wrap it up, and we'll maybe have another question. Okay, so along the bottom, okay, so we invest for yield more than capital gains. That was one of the questions and comments you had. Yield means cash flow, but if the capital gains come, we'll take it. Okay, so capital gains investing is not investing, it's gambling. It's gambling. Okay, you want to be an investor, not a gambler. Investors invest for yield, for cash flow. Gamblers invest for capital gains. And that involves market timing, and market timing is a fool's errand, okay? We don't fall for manias, fads, and bubbles, okay? Manias, fads, and bubbles. You know, Bill Bonner, one of my favorite financial writers, he's got a great book on manias. I think it's called like Manias, Messiahs, and Bubbles or something like that. And it talks about the history of all these crazy bubbles. We did a live stream recently, and it's on the YouTube channel and on our Facebook page, the jasonhartman.com Facebook page, with Kerry Lutz, when he talked about the history of bubbles, from tulip mania to John Law and the Mississippi land bubble and all these crazy things throughout history. Folks, you got to realize something. Smart, educated, wealthy, successful people fall for these things all the time. Okay? Really intelligent people, economists, famous people, they fall for all kinds of manias and bubbles, and they become victims of them. They fall for pyramid schemes. Look, how many famous, smart, sophisticated people fell for Bernie Madoff and his giant Ponzi scheme, the biggest Ponzi scheme in US history outside of the Ponzi scheme where he said he got the idea from, the Social Security system. Social Security, the biggest Ponzi scheme ever, right? Listen, just because some supposedly smart person is falling for it, you got to be your own best advisor, okay? The experts half the time fall for their own press clippings, their own ideas, okay? And that's why with my 10 commandments, which is now up to 23, I don't know if anybody understands what I'm saying when I say that. Like, if you're new to my work and I say, check out my 10 commandments, and I say all 23 of them, you know, I'm obviously being sarcastic, right? Because I've gone beyond the 10. There are 23 of them now. And with those 10 commandments, I've tried to just outline common sense ideas, things that make sense, that any rational person can just see that and say, okay, thou shalt maintain control, commandment number 3. You know, that makes sense. Being a direct investor makes sense. You shouldn't need an expert to tell you that. Yet, when you leave this live stream, you'll think, okay, I want to be a direct investor because that makes sense. I'm going to be in control of my investments. I'm not going to fall prey to the 3 things non-direct investors, people that invest in pooled money assets, in funds, in stocks, in bonds, in private placement memorandums. They fall for these things because they're not a direct investor, right? What are the 3 things? Number 1, you might be investing with a crook. Number 2, you might be investing with an idiot. And number 3, assuming they're honest and competent, number 3, they take a huge management fee off the top for managing the deal. Okay, that's the promoter, the sponsor of the investment. So as a direct investor, you never fall victim to that. You control the asset. Okay, it's very hard for anybody to steal your money when you control the property. Okay, yeah, you know, your property manager can skim a little cream off the top, but they really can't royally rip you off. Okay, they can't do that. So all of my commandments make sense on their face, all 23 of the 10 commandments. They make sense on their face. Any rational person can read my commandments and say, okay, that makes sense. Okay, I don't need to believe in Jason. I don't need to believe in any other person or guru. This just makes rational sense. It's a thing that makes sense on its face. Okay, and that's what we've tried to design. Okay, we've got a couple comments from one of our investment counselors here, Sarah. She says, portfolio financing rates also get better with a higher loan amount. No, you mean they get worse with a higher loan amount? Yes, a better loan to value ratio will give you a lower rate, meaning if you've got more skin in the game, if you've got more money in the deal, you're going to get a lower rate. So Sarah, yes, I get your meaning there, okay? Okay, so we have a good local market specialist for Charlotte, North Carolina, but inventory is tight. Yes, I am sure that is true. But I'm glad to hear you've got someone you like working with. So that is awesome. Okay, good stuff. Okay, folks, what else here? I think I caught all three of those. Manias, fads, and bubbles. Yes, and we'll get to the rest of them next time. I've been talking for a while here, and we're almost at an hour and a half. So I'm going to wrap it up for today and say thank you all for your great questions. Go to jasonhartman.com to learn more. Check out the podcast. The other live streams are right here on the YouTube channel or on the Facebook page, depending on where you're listening. And what else? I always like to grab one more question. Okay. Thanks, Sarah. My street name is Quincy. Okay, sounds good. Okay, Steve, is Orange County in Southern California considered a suburban area? Well, that's where I spent most of my adult life, Orange County. Okay, compared to LA, it is more spread out. It is a very hot market now. How about Riverside, Inland Empire to consider the suburbs too? Steve, those are almost all suburbs. There's really no downtown Orange County. There are some areas that are a little bit high density, but they're all suburbs. In fact, a lot of people would consider a lot of LA to be a suburb because it's sprawling, okay? So I grew up in Los Angeles as a kid, spent most of my adult life in Orange County as an adult, and then in 2011, I got smart and I got out of the Socialist Republic of California. Moved to Arizona, lived there for 6 years, and then lived in Las Vegas for a year and a half. Didn't like that too much, and now I've been living in Florida for over 2 years. I would highly recommend it. Here's the problem. Just because it's suburban does not mean it's a good investment. Suburban, yes, it is mostly suburban. I mean, you don't have to ask me that question. You can tell by looking around. Okay, is it suburban? Yeah. Do you have to drive a car to get everywhere? Yeah, that's a trademark of suburbia, right? But the properties are too expensive to work. And California now has rent control, and they're talking about retroactively, if you can, I mean, that state is so desperate to take money from people who produce wealth that California is just a scary place to do business. It's landlord unfriendly, it's business unfriendly, and they are trying to just encourage productive people to leave the state. So I would not recommend California. I just can't with a good conscience. Yes, it is suburban. Those areas you mentioned are suburban, but that's not, just because it's suburban is not going to solve every problem. The rent to value ratios are too low. The properties are too expensive. The rents haven't kept up, and the regulatory environment is not favorable to landlords. So I would not recommend California properties anywhere in California. Okay, anywhere. Nothing works there. So that's it. I guess we'll leave it at that for today. Thank you all for your questions. I want to wish you all happy investing. We will have podcasts 5 days a week. So tomorrow, check out the Creating Wealth podcast. We'll have a brand new podcast tomorrow. And then 5 days a week we're there. Live stream again next week. And what else? We got some webinars coming up we'll be announcing. So look for those announcements on the podcast. And just reach out to us at jasonhartman.com. If you need anything, our investment counselors are here to help you. And until next time, happy investing. Thanks for joining me. Bye, everybody.